Define leadership. What is a leader? Who is a leader?
Leadership first starts with, are you the CEO of yourself? So for me, the starting point is, how do you lead yourself? And therefore, how are you able to influence and engage the people around you?
Leadership is about setting the agenda, having a vision, taking others with you, taking a diverse bunch of people with you, and doing it the right way.
Leaders who are aware of the need of the physical well-being and actively working towards it have more energy, are better at decision making, and enhance overall performance.
The day I exercise or do my yoga and go to office, how I behave on that day would be slightly different from the day I have not done that exercise.
Practicing mindfulness is extremely important. And what do we mean by mindfulness is finding that amount of time when you tune out all distractions. But sharpening the mind involves focus. And you can build focus only if you're able to be totally mindful and focused on what you're doing.
In this episode of Discovery of an Author, we sit down with authors Rajesh Ramakrishnan and Nirupama Subramanian to discuss their book, The Nurturing Quotient. Now, this particular episode is centered around the concept of leadership. Along with Rajesh and Nirupama, I discuss what makes a good leader, the definition of a leadership, some of the leaders in today's time that are noteworthy and admirable in terms of the work that they're doing. And secondly, we also discuss how good leaders lead themselves, the things they do to nurture themselves, and then what they do to empower their team members or the ones who are working with them in any organization. For anyone who wants to know how to become a leader, what is a leader, what are the things that top leaders in today's day and age are doing, and how they are helping others, will greatly benefit from this episode. And for the very first time, we are introducing a concept of wisdom to remember. During this entire podcast, we have highlighted certain takeaways and important values that we feel would really enrich your life and understanding on this topic. These are the takeaways that you can actually note down, and it will add a lot of value to your own knowledge base. So do check out for these wisdom to remember, which we have put in our entire podcast, and it will really give you top takeaways from this episode. And after listening to this episode, if you also have some takeaway that you find value or unique, comment it on the episode. And if we like it, we will highlight it on our Instagram page and we will tag you as well. If you like this conversation, then I request you to please subscribe and continue listening to Discovery of an Author. Thank you. Nirupama and Rajesh, thank you so much and welcome to Discovery of an Author podcast. And thank you for taking out time from your busy schedule for this.
Thank you so much, Raghav, for having us.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Your book, The Nurturing Quotient, How to Grow Yourself and Others for Leadership Success. As we were discussing, Nirupama and Rajesh, this leadership term, I think is very broad. And I'm going to tell you an example. Couple of days back, and it's very fascinating, and tell me if you find it fascinating. Couple of days back, I was watching a movie on Apple TV. The movie's name is Highest to Lowest. In that movie, Denzel Washington is portraying a character of someone who has built up a music empire like Gulshan Kumar, T-series. He is that of America. So he has a record label wherein he has built that up and he promotes all the Afro-American artists. And he's known as the king. His name is David King. And they call him the king of pop or the king of music. Very rich guy, filthy rich guy. So there's a scene in the movie wherein he and his son is in high school. Must be 11th, 12th, something like that, whatever the equivalent of that is in America. So they were going in the limo to his office and he's like, I'll drop you on my way to the school. And his son is on his camera and so David's like, yo, what you doing? So he's like, Dad, I have so many followers. I'm just posing for them. So he's like, get off your phone, man. We are talking. And he's like, but my followers want to know what I'm doing, where I am. So Denzel says, oh, so you're some kind of a leader. He says, yeah, I'm an influencer. I'm a leader. And then he says, Denzel Washington to his son, yeah, where are you leading them to? And the kid had no answer. And when I heard Denzel saying, where are you leading them to? I'm like, damn, he's right. Isn't that supposed to be the foundation of a leader? Someone who discovers something first, sees something, and then realizes that this is amazing. I am going on this journey, and he goes and tells people that this is the journey that I'm going to undertake. Do you want to be with me? I promise you a better land. I promise you Jerusalem. I promise you Israel. I'll take you to Dwarka, whatever. And then people follow, yes, this is the man, he has seen something that we have not, and he wants to take us there. That's what Siddhartha Gautam did when he discovered his truth. So with this, Rajesh and Nirupama, my first question, let's get into the philosophy and psychology of this terminology. Define leadership. What is a leader? Who is a leader?
Maybe I'll venture a definition and then hand it over to Rajesh. And Raghav, thanks for starting us off with a very interesting and thought-provoking story. I've been a leadership development facilitator for the last 20 years. So my work as a consultant is to help people discover exactly this. What is leadership? And I found it interesting that in every workshop that I have done, and I would have done it for thousands and thousands of people, there is always a different definition of the answer to the question, who is a leader? So I found that, very interesting when you had your perspective. And there have been multiple definitions which have been given as well. So in my context, I think leadership first starts with, are you the CEO of yourself? So for me, the starting point is, how do you lead yourself? And therefore, how are you able to influence and engage the people around you? So the two for me are very closely connected. In every leadership intervention that I do, I start with leading self, because I believe a leader has to have that clarity of vision and purpose that you mentioned, the ability and the competence to deliver on that promise, and the influencing ability to take people along. And if you have that, you can be a leader, whether you're a student leader, whether you're a leader of a large corporate, or whether you're a leader, even as a teacher, you are still being a leader if you're able to lead yourself and have a goal or a purpose towards which you can take people along. And I say leadership is about a choice that you're making on a daily basis. Are you acting like a leader in everything you do? The way you engage with the wait staff at a restaurant, the way you treat the people around you, are you doing it with respect? Are you doing it with openness, compassion? Are you being passionate in even a talk that you're giving? To me, that is an embodiment of leadership. It's determined by the choices you make every day, whether you're going to be a leader in this context or not. And that to me is the foundation of leadership. Whether you're leading a $1 million company or whether you have this breakthrough idea, I think is a wonderful aspect of leadership. But to me, that is secondary to the choices that you make every day as to how you're leading as a person and how you're impacting the people around you.
Yeah, makes sense. So you're saying it starts with first leading yourself, the individual.
Absolutely, right? So we always say, are you a CEO of a large corporation? But I do a very interesting exercise saying, are you CEO of self? And therefore, do you have what it takes to lead at scale? Right? So leading I see it as many levels. Leading the self, leading the people around you, maybe leading a large organization, leading a nation, and then creating an idea, like you said, Buddha, leading with an idea that influences people across the world. So these are different levels, but the starting point is your core, who you are as a leader in terms of the choices that you make. And that's been my role in helping people discover the leader in themselves. Right? It actually starts with, do I want to be a leader at all? And, what does leadership look to me?
I am so sorry for the sudden interruption. ये हमें करना पड़ता है और हमको इसी प्रकार से इंटरप्ट करना पड़ता है. But I have a request कि guys, अगर आपको थोड़ी भी वैल्यू लग रही है in what we are providing with our podcast, in the kind of content that we are creating, and in the kind of people that we are bringing on our show, please subscribe to our channel. This is the only way in which any podcast on YouTube can grow. It will cost you nothing. आपने सिर्फ subscribe करना है, and trust me guys, if you subscribe to this podcast, we'll make sure that we continue delivering you such amazing कंटेंट, इंटेलिजेंट कंटेंट. हम एक इंटेलिजेंट पॉडकास्ट क्रिएट करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. दैट इज वाई हमारे जितने भी गेस्ट होते हैं वो सारे पब्लिश ऑथर्स होते हैं जिनका वर्क के देयर इज अ बैकिंग टू देयर वर्क. कोई भी कुछ ऐसे नहीं बोल रहा. सो गाइस, प्लीज सब्सक्राइब टू आवर चैनल and continue enjoying and listening to this episode.
Because I don't lead a large company, but I lead a lot of people in the context of the work that I do. And therefore, I see myself as a leader in that context.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Rajesh, what's your take on this thing?
Yeah, I mean, just to build on what Nirupama said, firstly, thanks for starting it with a very interesting anecdotal example, and it's a very relevant question to ask. I think fundamentally who you are is how you lead. I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind. And, very early on, I came across there are many frameworks for leadership. I came across a very simple 3-step framework, which I still follow by, which is leadership is about setting the agenda, having a vision, taking others with you, taking a diverse bunch of people with you, and doing it the right way. Right? So it's really about this very simple 3 steps. Do you have a very clear vision on what you want to do? Do you have the ability to take a diverse bunch of people towards that commonly aligned vision? And are you doing it the right way? Right? And I think in a way that captures all of what Nirupama said as well. In order to set a vision, firstly, you need to understand yourself and you need to know where you want to go. And that could be physical, that could be not necessarily physical. So it could be a state of being, right? We talk about leadership as being able to help people to unlock their potential. Now, that's not a physical destination, but it's a state of mind where you want to take people, right? So having that clarity, then being able to sort of take a bunch of people, explain to them why we need to go there, how we could potentially go there, and enabling them to go there, and making sure that all of this is done in the realm of being ethical about it, moral about it, following the right process, and so on and so forth. So I think this, to me, summarizes the essence of leadership. And I completely agree with what Nirupama said, which is it all starts with the self, right? And if I'm able to lead myself, I'm able to know myself and do that well, I'm able to then do that for others as well.
So there is this another thing that I wanted to understand now. So I do understand, and realize that the first step is to work on yourself, broadly speaking, right? That you are able to manage yourself, that you're able to lead yourself, that at least you know what you want to, or is it good to say how do you want to conduct yourself? Is that what is working on yourself means in this context, Nirupama?
Yes, exactly. So I think having clarity on who you are, what are your values, what is your purpose, right? That answers the question. You should know where are you leading the people to.
But Nirupama, tell me then.
Yeah.
Now so let's say I am working on myself. There is a certain way in which I conduct myself. Okay, let me take an example of my father. Okay. Fairly disciplined man, very ethical, very strict on following the guidelines and the timelines. The world doesn't know him. The world doesn't know him apart from friends and family. But he has led his life in a very just way. Doesn't have any followers that the world knows of.
Yeah.
He has a son, he has a wife, he has brothers, sisters. They admire him for who that man is. And there are many such people, many such fathers, many such mothers out there in the entire world. And obviously, nurturing themselves, finding their purpose is a journey in itself, which can take you multiple births, if I can go to that level as well, because sometimes, it's very difficult to know what your purpose is. So is my father in this case a leader then? Because I really want to distinguish. Then
yes,
he doesn't have followers.
Yeah. I would say, would the people around him consider him to be a role model and a person who has deeply impacted their lives, somebody they look up to? In that case, I would definitely say he is a leader, right? One is who you are. The second is what is the game that you're playing, right? Of course, we know the leaders who play a big game. We know the prime minister, we know the leaders, we know of these people because the game they are playing is bigger. And that is a question of choice. Sometimes leadership, they say, like greatness is also thrust upon you, that you're born into a particular family, a particular context, you're expected to rise to that leadership level. And leadership is often a choice of deciding what is the game that you want to play. And I would say leadership at scale is about playing a bigger game, right? It's about deciding how much more I want to be and what is the game I want to play. Am I happy playing, let's say, just to give you an example, gully cricket and doing a great job of it, that my neighborhood knows me? I'm okay, I'm playing at the state level. These people know me, I'm playing at the national level and I become a global icon in the game. That is leadership at scale. But I do want to say there is leadership at scale, and there's also leadership that you demonstrate to your audience and a target group. What is different? The difference is the scale, the game that you're playing. But if you're playing your game well and you're looked up to for your certain traits and qualities, and you're leaving some kind of a legacy behind, even if it is to a small group of people, you are definitely a leader. I think the question we are saying is, are you, or do you want to be a leader at scale? Or you can choose to be a leader in any which way you want. Let's say a teacher whom nobody knows, but has taught some of the greatest minds, maybe in a small village school somewhere in the country, is also a leader. Because let's say she's had a huge impact on her students who've grown up and gone on to do great and better things, but nobody might have heard about her. But for her students, they really look up to her, and 30 years later, they say, no, ma'am, in my class too, gave me the courage to do this. The world may not know her. Hopefully, she sees herself as a leader, and the people who matter see her as a leader. So I think we often get caught up at this. I want to say, making the distinction between being famous and being a leader who is effective in your own domain. And nothing wrong in being, I think, nothing wrong in being leader at scale. You should be a leader at scale, and we always urge people to dream big, be ambitious. But not everybody gets to be a CEO. Not everybody gets to be a prime minister. But what everybody can do is to be a leader in your context. Choose your context and be a leader in that context. And in that context, be the best version of yourself. That is also leadership.
What's your take, Rajesh, on this?
No, I completely agree, and I think I think leadership happens at different levels, right? Sometimes I've been working in corporates for many years, right? And then people ask me, "Oh, to be a leader, do I have to be a CEO?" And my answer is no, right? You can be a leader at any level that you are. So, for example, let's take in a sales organization, the lowest level is the sales representatives whose job is to go day in and day out and sell in the market. Now, at a sales representative level, I am literally working 5 streets in Bangalore or Chennai or wherever. Can I be a leader there? Absolutely, yes. It is a question of exactly going back to the 3 points I was mentioning. As a person, am I able to set an agenda for that ecosystem? Am I able to take a bunch of people in that ecosystem towards that agenda? And am I able to do all of this in the right way? So if I look at it from that perspective, I can be a leader just in those 5 streets, doing a great job of becoming the best salesperson in that territory, or inspiring and nurturing a whole bunch of people to do greater things in their life. So I think leadership definitely is a set of qualities that you imbibe and possess, but can be demonstrated at different levels, right from a unit level to a nation or an international level.
No, I think that makes sense, Nirupama and Rajesh. So you are saying that there are multiple levels of leadership, and that depends on the geography, that depends on the situation, that depends on the community, that depends on a lot of things. But if any individual has shown certain characteristics and traits that people feel that if we do align with her or him, we'll benefit. That basically is what being a leader or exuding leadership traits
Absolutely.
is, right? So I should feel that maybe I can gain something from this individual, be it in terms of my own personal growth, or I am liking where she is taking me, or I am liking where she's heading, and this is where even I want to head. Maybe she found something that I was trying to find, but I didn't have the clarity to see it the way she's seeing it. Let me rally behind her. Is that what you're saying? So it's that magnetism that others can also feel. Oh my God, that's powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it has to extend to beyond you. Well, I say it starts with you, it has to extend beyond you, but it's up to you to decide where do you want to play, right? So, for example, the president of a building society is also a leader who has to take the residents along, but you play in that domain. And what kind of a leader you are will show up in your context. Tomorrow, a leader of a non-profit or, in school, what we call a head boy, head girl is also a leader in that context. And then people around you look up to you, get inspired by you, believe in a cause or a purpose or something that you stand for. Whether it's 2 people, 3 people, or 2 million people is really the choice you want to make about the game you play. But ability to impact the ecosystem around you in a positive way is an essential element of leadership.
But let's
But you
say,
choose that ecosystem. Yeah.
let's say I'm someone who is unconsciously throwing off the traits of being a very potent leader unconsciously. I'm not deliberately doing it. It is just the way I conduct my lifestyle that people are like, "Arey, look at that person. He looks pretty, sorted in his life, and maybe I can follow what he's doing." Right? Or he jumped from this company to other. He must have thought something only. That's why he jumped. Maybe let me also try and jump at that company. So now a lot of people are getting inspired by me. They feel certain sense of leadership things coming from me or leadership traits coming from me. But let's say even I realize at one point that yes, I have these traits. I have this power. I can be a leader, but I choose not to. Does that make me a bad leader? So what I'm trying to ask, Virat Kohli knows that he is a great athlete, but he refuses to exercise his skill set, and rather he say, nahi, nahi, nahi. I'll go to a corporate ecosystem, have a great salary, good job, good wife, life, kids. I'll be happy. I don't want to be an athlete. And people are like, dude, you are amazing. You can be the world's greatest athlete. But he refuses to. Now, here comes the quandary, the question mark. If he decides not to be a leader, he is aligning with his own ideology. That's his decision. Then, I don't want to be an athlete. But the others around him want him to be an athlete because they know he can be the greatest. So he is aligning with himself only. He is not coming under pressure. He is sticking to what he believes in. That means he has worked on himself, but he does not want to exercise the right of becoming leader. So how would you dissect that individual? He does not want to be, he has the traits, and he's not listening to anyone.
In fact, I think that is and I'll give it to, I think that's a very positive thing, because the first thing you need to be a leader is to want to be a leader. If you're not aligned with that as a choice and you're thrust into it very reluctantly, whether you have the skills or capabilities to take that position, only time will tell. Right? And it doesn't mean that everybody has to be a leader. Sachin Tendulkar is a great player. He was probably not a great captain or a leader of people, and he had the wisdom to realize that. The ecosystem had the wisdom to realize that, and let's say, do what you're really good at. Right. So I might be good at, for example, I did finance. I joined a bank, but I soon realized I didn't want to be a vice president in a bank. And people might have said, oh, you're not, you can do accounts. But for me, that was not aligned to my strengths and values and purpose. So I chose not to follow that as a path. I don't think it's a question of good or bad. It's a question of whether it's right for you or not. And you are the best person to take make that choice and decision. Individual excellence does not necessarily translate into leading others at scale, right? Similarly, people who may not be I may not be a brilliant player, but I can be a great leader of others. And that starts with, I would say, choice. So if that choice and decision is not there, I think it's very wise for you not to take on the leadership role under peer pressure. At the same time, that's why I say start with leading self, because you have to be very clear why I'm doing this. I'm not taking up the leadership role because I'm scared of failure, I'm scared of stepping out of my comfort zone, but I'm not taking it up because I'm very aligned. Buddha was very aligned. He didn't want to be king. He chose to lead in a different way. So having that clarity of choice and not succumbing to peer pressure to do something just because people say you must do it, I think is a sign of leadership. At the same time, I want to balance that out with very often leaders emerge because of circumstances. You're thrust into a role, and then you either sink or swim, or you really rise. And then it's up to you to decide whether I want to step out of my comfort zone or not. So I'd really move away from, good or bad to being truly aligned, whether it's right for you or not.
So you're saying, so there is no good or bad. It is about what one individual believes in and then gathers people to rally behind him or her to achieve that aim as a collective. Right? Now, so that means, so I'm going to take two examples because leadership in today's time, the most powerful segment wherein we do judge leaders is the political ecosystem. In the political ecosystem, I have two figures in my mind and I have been very, very, very confused about both of them. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi from the Eastern political ecosystem and Adolf Hitler from the European political ecosystem. Now, both leaders, leading people, they had their individual, though very different, philosophical point of views. One was clearly non-violent in his approach. The other was pro-violent in his approach. Now, Hitler wanted to kill a community of people, or he completely wanted to eradicate a community of people, Jews in this case. He created his ideology, he gathered people, he rallied up nations, and the world knows what happened. We had 2 world wars. And the spark was his hatred for a particular community that he wanted to completely eradicate. That was his vision, that was his aim, and he was able to rally people. He was able to gather army, create armies who will work with him and kill people in the most ruthless way possible. And he has been very vocal about his philosophy in Mein Kampf, the autobiographical book that he wrote about himself. Stark contrast, you have Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, who believed in non-violence in a time wherein some kind of violence should have been there. And that is my personal opinion. But he did believe in non-violence. He stuck to his guts till the very end. And any which ways, we do credit him for freeing our nation as of now. And that is why we call him the father of our nation. And India has followed or adopted the philosophy of non-violence. Such was the impact of that one leader. Now, Nirupama and Rajesh, if the end goal does not matter, good or bad, if a leader is able to take up a goal which is catastrophic in its nature and rally people behind him or her, how do you then dissect such a figure?
Yeah, I think, again, I'm going back to the 3 steps that I was speaking about, which is for a good leader, it's really about, having a vision, setting an agenda, taking a bunch of people with them and doing it the right way. Now, if you look at, let's take the 2 examples that you said, and if you look at Gandhi, he had a vision that he wanted a free, independent India. And then there were, of course, India is a massive country, very diverse set of people. He rallied all of them behind this path of ahimsa and non-violence. And in his mind, he did it the right way to make sure that he got the country independence. Now, one could argue, and there are so many stories and so many anecdotes that we hear saying that I think anything that's practiced and taken to an extreme can be detrimental to the larger cause, right? So ahimsa is good, but when you take it to everything is contextual and leadership is contextual. So the wisdom of a leader is also to understand when do you need to use what, right? So I am a leader. I believe in collaborative leadership, but there is a crisis. There is a fire going on in my factory. I am responsible for putting that out in the next 10 minutes. I can't be going and taking a vote on that, right? So I think a little bit of wisdom of the leader is also to contextually understand the situation, use their wisdom to say, this needs to be done now. And that's where the agility of the leader from a situation agility point of view comes into, right? So that's very, very important. And then if you're able to do that well, you're able to succeed. Now let's take the example of Hitler that you spoke about. Again, if I were to use the same kind of a framework, he had a vision. He had a vision of a glorified, unified, large piece of land, and he had the ability to get a bunch of people together on a common ideology. One can question the ideology to say whether how much of a carrot, how much of a stick was that approach. But where probably it didn't go well is doing it the right way. Are you doing it in the way that is in norms with basic human values, in line with the values that the society puts together, and so on and so forth, right? So again, if I were to look at that example, did he achieve a lot of what he wanted to achieve? Yes. Which brings us to the question of the means versus the end. And ultimately, in a leadership role, it is a question of then making sure that you balance the two out, and doing it the right way becomes an important and integral part of it as well.
Nirupama, your take.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. We know that history is written by the victors.
Yeah.
Right. So those who win battles have also got the right to shape the narrative in the way they want to. And in that point of time, they are not too worried about how generations later will judge them. They are operating in their current context. And it can be very different. And I'll give you an example, right? In India, I grew up studying history. There's a character called Temur Lane, who was seen as a very vicious, cruel, barbaric invader. We went to Uzbekistan a few months ago, and he is their national hero.
Yeah, I know.
Right? He is almost revered, worshipped. He is there everywhere. Now, what is the right version? Right? Was he a national hero? Yes. Was he a barbaric invader? Absolutely. So it really depends upon where you are and what is the version that you're given, which leads you to interpret a person's actions in a particular way. Right? So in Hitler's context at that point of time, he was probably a national hero. In a different context, obviously to the Jews and rest of the world, he is a very cruel, barbaric leader is also not I would use, so an individual. Right? So I would say, as Rajesh said, it is very, very contextual. Another example, which is that the founding fathers of America, which is held up as a beacon of civil rights and liberty, were all slave owners. And they didn't see a contradiction. They didn't see a contradiction at that point of time between owning slaves and fighting for liberty, equality, and the pursuit of happiness, except not for slaves. Of course, that changed with Abraham Lincoln and all of that. But in that context, owning slaves was a very normal, natural thing to do. And now, do we judge them as slave owners, or do we judge them as people who gave freedom to an entire nation? So I think it a lot depends upon the perspective. Who knows how people will think of Mahatma Gandhi 200 years from now? That can also change. I think it's very important for you to be aligned, therefore, at that point of time that you are doing something, and I would call it for the greater good. And that is an unassailable fact, right? I'm sure the leaders who were also perpetrating genocides or killing people know that they are not doing it for the greater good, but for individual glory, power, to gain a particular position, to take revenge. And if those are your motivations, I'm fairly sure you are, as a leader, also quite aligned to the fact that what you're doing is not really for the greatest good. So I think the underpinning aspect of leadership is integrity and ethical considerations. And if you're violating that, then you are probably not a great leader. And I would make the distinction. You're probably a good leader because you embody and demonstrate certain leadership traits, but you're not going to be a great leader who is able to do all of that and do it in an ethical way, keeping in mind human values and basic, and I would say very basic human considerations, which is don't go around killing innocent people, right? Don't torture people. So I think if you keep certain basic principles of human dignity in mind, that is essential to be a great leader, no matter at what level you are operating. So again, as I said, how you're going to be judged really depends upon the context and where you are, and you have no control over that. But you need to be aligned. Your internal moral compass should guide you, and at least surround yourself with people who guide you in the right way, which is very important for a leader to have naysayers around that when you're taking some step which is not aligned to basic human values, You're able to create the safety, psychological safety that people will call you out on that. And that is a trait of a great leader as well.
Yeah. Nirupama, actually, thank you for saying that, because I also believe in the same thing. I think there has to be some kind of, do's and don'ts, certain things that at least some kind of morality, some ethics, don't kill people. There has to be some, the buck stops here. You can't cross that. You can't go beyond that. Otherwise, you would be deemed and history would not be kind to you. Like history is not kind to Hitler anymore. So, Rajesh and Nirupama, now I do want to deep dive into understanding the nurturing quotient, and also, so, okay. Basically, what you have mentioned in the book, there are two broad pillars of leadership. A is self-nurture, B is empowering. That you first nurture yourself, you first become what you want to become, and then you empower others. So these are two things. In self-nurturing, there are various 4 segments you have decided: the soul, body, mind, spirit, that how do you absolutely, work on these 4 aspects. So I want to get into that as well. That's very important for people to know. But before that, I have another very important question for you guys. Consider that I am trying to pick up your brain when it comes to this segment. In today's time, see, I understand, Nirupama, when you were talking about being colonized, that was the way. The way to colonize a group of people or community or geography or a country was involved logistics, involved movement, involved going from one land to the other land, conquering, defeating, barbaric activities, warfare, everything, politics, everything. I firmly believe that today we are living in an era of digital colonialism. There are no logistics involved. There are fiber optics which are involved. These are bytes which are involved. It's a digital warfare that is happening. Any person who is even remotely knowledgeable of the way things are happening in the tech domain understands the fact that we are living in an era wherein 5 tech companies are trying to shape the direction of humanity. Meta, Microsoft, Tesla, Amazon, and OpenAI, and Peter Thiel's PayPal, and a lot of other companies that he has, which are in news right now. Palantir. Now, my problem is this. These tech leaders, these are tech leaders. They saw something, they discovered something, they created these things, and the world is using them. I cannot imagine a world, Nirupama and Rajesh, where there is no Google Maps. I'll break. I can't function without Google Maps, or I cannot function without Android, or I cannot function without internet. These were the inventions of tech leaders, right? Now what is happening, I'm going to take 2 examples, right? And then I want your opinion. I'll take an example of Tesla or Elon Musk, particularly because you're talking about leaders, specifically in the corporate ecosystems also. So now I want to shift from political to corporate ecosystem. Elon Musk and Sergey Brin and Larry Page, the founders of Google. Now, Elon Musk was always in news for the way he used to make his workforce work. When he wanted to acquire Twitter, we all know what happened. 48 hours, people are working non-stop. He's not sleeping. He has no social life of his own. He's making people work, and people are justifying, oh, he's a visionary. He's trying to save humanity. We're going to Mars. He wants to take us to Mars because the vision is so undigestible. You're like, wow, it must be something amazing that the guy is thinking if he wants to take humanity to Mars. Let's rally behind him for 3 days non-stop without eating, sleeping. Let's work. Okay. On the other hand, you have people like Sergey Brin and Larry Page. They have been the CEOs of Google for 20 years. Now it is Sundar Pichai, and before that it was Eric Schmidt. They never overworked their employees. They always created a great ecosystem in the company. You can play, you can work, and yet we'll be able to create products that will benefit humanity. They are no less ambitious in their aims as Elon Musk's company are. So when I see tech leaders in today's time, I clearly have a bias. I clearly have my own preferences of leadership. I don't like the leadership style of Elon Musk, though he's a very popular figure. I never liked the leadership philosophy of Steve Jobs. Because I do not think that it was right for anybody to verbally degrade any human being, be it for creating products or be it for anything. I love Sergey and Larry. They were always at the back end. They never came in the forefront. They always created products that changed the globe, and they never put their employees to extremes. So, Nirupam and Rajesh, I want to understand your perspective on today's tech leaders. And I want you guys to name me one tech leader, specifically tech leader I'm talking about. I'm not talking about L&T, not Infosys. No, one tech leader which you guys feel ki imbibes everything that we're talking about in a book. And it is a personal favorite for you guys as well. So let's dissect this thing.
That's to get started. I think we have seen all kinds of tech leaders, Raghav, and I think you yourself answered the question as to some of us are biased towards certain kinds, and some of us are biased towards others. And people like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk have a huge number of followers as well, right? So I want to make a distinction, therefore, between two types of leaders, right? One is the visionary maverick, right? Like an Elon Musk, who has a great idea, who is brilliant, often mercurial, comes up with completely breakthrough, innovative thinking, and then builds an ecosystem around it to take it forward. And there are others who actually are taking it up to the next level. They are the ones who are scaling it, like what Tim Cook is doing with Apple, like what Sundar Pichai is doing with Google, like what Satya Nadella is doing with Microsoft. These were not the breakthrough visionaries who had the original idea, but they are no less intelligent and smart, but they are able to build at scale. Very often, and history has shown us that the visionary mavericks are great leaders as thought leaders, but they may not necessarily be great organization leaders or corporate leaders because it requires very different kinds of mindset and skill set. And there's nothing wrong. We might need both. But the leader who is truly smart and survives is the one who knows, hey, I need somebody else to take this legacy on and take it to the next level, right? Which is what Bill Gates did with Microsoft. He got others on. Steve Ballmer came after him to take it to the next level because he was also growing and evolving. So I would say that perhaps at the startup level, when you're building and initiating, you need the visionary maverick style of leadership. But when you want to grow a company, when you want to lead people at scale, you need to move to a more nurturing leadership style. And on that note, I want to say we've quoted Elon Musk in our book, and he now says, with probably some age and wisdom, that I no longer can survive with just 4 hours of sleep. I get brain pain. So I think with age, that probably, I think wisdom has come that I cannot be the startup founder hustling people I was many years ago. I need to make the shift. And the leaders who are able to make that shift are the ones who are truly going to succeed. We have people like Eric Newman or Travis Kalanick of Uber who are great visionary startup leaders, but they might not be able to sustain leadership at scale. So what we talk about in the book is really leadership at scale, leadership where you take people along, where the visionary maverick style of leadership alone is not enough. You have to balance it out with a more nurturing, people-oriented, steady state kind of leadership to take your idea to the next level. Otherwise, many ideas are fantastic, but you cannot scale, you cannot grow at the level that you want. And I think even in the tech world, we've seen leaders at all ends of the spectrum. One of the leaders we have researched and studied, of course, we could not talk to him, is Satya Nadella. We have followed his talks, his writing, and one of the things he really stresses a lot about is empathy. So even when you have to lay off employees, which sometimes you might have to do because of business considerations, can you do that in a more empathetic way? Can you be a little vulnerable and talk about, some of the things that you are going through, yet be a strong, decisive leader who is thinking differently? And Microsoft made, a lot of bold moves under his leadership as well. At the same time, you are trying to do the best to create a nurturing ecosystem and take people along. So I think he's one of the leaders we have studied and somebody who I admire in terms of taking the organization to the next level through a fairly nurturing, empathetic leadership style.
Yeah. Rajesh, your take?
Yeah, I think one of the very important things to keep in mind is, are we working towards a sustainable and holistic growth, right? And I think these are the two operative words, which is one is it going to stand the test of time? And second, is it holistic in every way, right? So if you look at the leaders, and Nirupama spoke about it, I'd like to use a framework to say there is a respect axis and there is a love axis. Yeah, you respect people for the competencies that they bring to the table, right? So Elon Musk would respect him for his vision, for his technical understanding, XYZ. And you love people for who they are, right? So what ideally you want to see is people sitting on top of the diagram. And that's where you succeed in the long term. Yeah. So, again, if I were to take a cricket analogy, one guy I hugely respect and love is, say, somebody like a Rahul Dravid, right?
Yeah.
You respect him because he's got the technical capability, he's got the temperament, he's the wall, all of that. And you love him as a person because he's humble, he's authentic, he's approachable, right? So that puts him on top of that diagonal. Yeah. So I think people like Satya Nadella and a lot of other names that Nirupama mentioned, they fall in the category of being on top of the diagonal. And I think our fundamental premise is that that's where you want to be for long-term, sustainable, holistic growth.
So something you are saying which is sustainable. So it's not a keto diet that you can do for 2-3 months and then leave. You can survive on dal chawal. You need a home cooked food that you can eat for ages, right? So that's what you're talking about when you talk about sustainability, not something that might grow and crash.
It's not steroids you give people to be on a leadership high on a few days and then you come crashing down. It's something that has to be consistent and sustainable over a period.
Any leader from the Indian ecosystem that you admire or that you feel maybe he imbibes the values that we are talking about, that includes empathy, that includes self-nurturing also, that includes empowering. It could be not just IT sector, it could be any company that you feel. Like my personal favorite is Nandan Lilikani. Yeah, I love him. He's amazing. I think he's amazing.
I think there are many leaders. If I were to pick a name, I'd probably pick Ratan Tata as an example, right? Visionary, knew his stuff, strong on business acumen. So all of the respect axis gets ticked off. And if I were to look at the love axis, approachable, humble, authentic. So again, he probably sits right at top of the diagram.
Nirupama, your favorite? As in, if we take the same axes as Rajesh is saying, who fits the bill?
One of the leaders I admire is Leena Nair, a very contemporary leader who is now the global leader of Chanel, but I would still claim her as Indian. And I've had the good fortune of listening to her talk at a large women leadership program that I'm a part of. And I think one of her philosophies, which she often talks about, is lift as you climb. So I think it's very important for the leader to keep growing.
Absolutely.
You can lead at scale, right? And I think her journey was remarkable. She comes from the same business school that Rajesh and I went to, XLRI. She was an HR head at, Hindustan Levers in India. That was the context, from HR head of Hindustan Levers to CHRO of Unilever worldwide to becoming the global CEO of Chanel has been a remarkable journey of expanding your sphere of influence. But also taking people along. And she's been, very vocal about the fact that you do need an empathetic, compassionate style of leadership, which also delivers profits and numbers. Yeah. So leading for both profits and purpose is something I deeply admire. And I deeply admire the way she has gone ahead with her career, being unapologetically ambitious, but also deeply compassionate and empathetic. So, that's the love and respect axis. And now I think also as a role model for many people, and in terms of how you can grow and enhance the impact of your leadership. And I think that is what we call the leadership imperative, is to keep growing and grow others, which is what the nurturing quotient is also all about.
Yeah. Now, Rajesh and Nirupama, I want to dissect and go deep into the nurturing quotient. If you were to describe nurturing quotient in a line or two for people to know, how would you define nurturing quotient? Because when I hear the term nurturing quotient, I understand it being a power to nurture. That's what it seems, right? Nurturing quotient, that how, like IQ, intelligence quotient, how high are you on the scale of IQ? The more higher up you go, that means the more intelligence, your brain is good at analytics. Because intelligence is analytics. I'm not talking about being philosophical. Philosophy and intelligence are two very different things, right? So on an analytical point of view, you are very high. EQ is emotional, that how emotional, not just how emotional you are, or emotionally aware you are. Of you can also understand other people's emotions and then act. So first define nurturing quotient, and then we'll go into the 4 areas of how we can cultivate that.
So if I may start, I think we see nurturing quotient as a measure of an individual's ability to consistently nurture themselves and others. Right? So what we are actually measuring is not intelligence, but behavioral consistency, which is easy to observe. It is easy to understand. It's really how often and how well are you practicing the behaviors of nurturing self and nurturing others. So the two key aspects as to what NQ measures is behavioral indicators and consistency. So for example, if you go and exercise for one day, yes, you're demonstrating the behavior, but you're not being consistent. So NQ, in a way, the nurturing quotient measures ability and consistency of the behaviors to nurture self and others, which leads to personal growth as well as organizational growth and business.
Now, there are 4 pillars that you have mentioned. So the 4 pillars of self-nurture that you mentioned in the book are the soul, body, heart, and mind. So I just, want to go a little bit into each of the pillars and understand how you can nurture this thing. So Nirupama and Rajesh, first, let's talk about the soul. You first define soul, and how can we nurture soul? Or how can a leader nurture the soul aspects? And if you can give some examples over here. Start with the definition of the soul first. What you think is the right definition of soul?
Yeah, so I think if I were to just go for it, one of the things first I'll say is that the 4 dimensions we mention are body, mind, heart, and soul. And I know you picked soul, but if it's okay with you, we'll probably start with the body.
Let's start with body, but Rajesh, if we are started with body now, there is one line from the book that I want to say. I think that's very important. And of all the 4 pillars now, I have a lot to say on the body part of it. So it's mentioned in the book, leaders who are aware of the need of the physical well-being and actively working towards it have more energy, are better at decision making, and enhance overall performance. Now, this is a very solid line. So you are saying that if the physical wellness is there and the body is apt and functioning, better at decision making and enhance overall performance. So with this line, let's deep dive into the body aspect. And I'll tell you one observation. I've worked in so many corporates, startups, and ecosystems. The higher people go in pay scale, the lower they go in their health. It is only now that people have started running marathons. It is only now that people have started participating in Ironman, in endurance sports. You have Sugar's founder, I'm forgetting her name, she's a shark. She's a marathoner. Vinita Singh. There are so many corporate leaders who are doing Ironmans now because they have the money. Endurance sports, physical activities, like you have Nikhil Kamat's brother, I'm forgetting his name, the bigger, the elder brother. What's his name?
Nikhil Kamat.
He is into endurance. Dilip Kumar, who's the founder of Zerodha. No, not Zerodha, 01 by Zerodha. He's associated with them. Rain Matter Investments or something like that. He is high into endurance. So what I've seen, the more you rise up to the level in the corporate ecosystem, your health starts deteriorating till the time something happens ki, "Arey, I'm hospitalized. Smoking say I'm nearly dying." Then they start taking action. So with this, Rajesh, let's deep dive into the body aspect of why is it so important? Why we as a civilization, Indian workforce, have always neglected it.
Yeah, and thanks for asking that. And Raghav, the reason I said let's start with physical is the way we look at it, and our belief is that good health and good physical well-being is foundational for good mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. Right? If your body is not in good shape and if you're not in a healthy space, you can't think clearly, you can't be emotionally, fulfilled, nor can you get into any spiritual and other practices. Right? And that's why I was saying that let's start with body. And you're right. I would agree with you to a large extent, but I would also say that today there is a lot of change happening where people are becoming aware of themselves, their body, their health, and I think we are seeing semblances of proactively taking care of oneself in a lot more holistic manner and across levels. You're not waiting to become 45 and 50 and then figuring out there are some problems with you and then starting to take care. You see a lot more youngsters into gyms and practicing yoga and so on and so forth. So in the book, what we thought we'll explore as the four dimensions was we said body is the most important, or physical well-being is one of the most important foundations for this. And there we see that one is about the physical exercise that becomes very important, and it could be in different forms. We interviewed 117 leaders, and they all talk about their own ways of getting physical exercise, which could be yoga, which could be running, which could be going to the gym, playing golf, and so on and so forth. Another very important element of it is what you put into your body in terms of nutrition and hydration. And the third one, which often is underrated, is amount of sleep that you get, the quantity of sleep and the quality of sleep. Right. So I think these are the three fundamental things that are important to ensure physical well-being, which then serves as a great foundation for mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being.
So and it is backed by studies, right? So there are research and studies that actually correlate the
Absolutely.
improvement in physical condition directly with the mental performance. Is that true?
Yeah, you asked about this question of, you read from the book and said, physical
Yeah.
well-being leads to better decision making. I mean, I can give personal examples, right? Firstly, you know that when you do a physical activity, the endorphins kick in and there is a lot of, positive, happiness inducing hormones that get generated. A couple of leaders spoke about it. I can talk about it from personal example. The day I exercise or do my yoga and go to office, how I behave on that day would be slightly different from the day I have not done that exercise,
And
because
different, positive, different.
in a good way.
In a good way.
In a good way, right? Because I have done my exercise, I feel good, I feel happy, and I go into office energized. Then my quality of interactions, the quality of decision making, definitely is a few notches above than the day where I had to miss it because of some reason. And then there is that disappointment in me, but also equally important, the positive benefits that would have otherwise kicked in are not there on that day. And that has a direct bearing on how you conduct yourself at different levels in the organization, or forget office. It could be just as a person as well.
And this is not psychological, right? Ki, Arey, I woke up at 6 and I did the most difficult thing of the day and I'm feeling pumped because of that. This
Not
is
at
not
all.
psychological. This is actually when the physical body is better,
It's physiological.
it
Yes.
impacts your mind.
Yes. Yes. And there are many studies that show the direct correlation between getting good sleep, how that has a direct bearing on how you function the next day. I mean, we all know that, right? If you consistently get 3-4 hours of sleep and then you're trying to function in your peak capacity, that simply isn't possible. The body needs to recharge. The body needs to, replenish energy before it can become fully optimal.
So basically, you're saying, so we have two people, two leaders in the corporate ecosystem. One does not exercise at all, and the other person exercises or takes care of her body. So you are saying that though both might end up being great CEOs and leaders and generate a lot of revenue, what I'm feeling to understand is the person who is actually exercising, how much of a difference or a leverage would she have against the one who's not? I mean, is the difference very silver lining difference? Yeah, it is something substantial. Ki, "Arey yaar, I missed out on this activity. I could have been that."
And let me just add to that, Raghav. Of course, exercise is one part of it. We are really talking about taking care of your health through exercise, nutrition, and sleep, right? So it's a full package. It's not that I can show that every morning I ran for 1 hour, therefore I perform better. I think it's about taking care of health And if you look back, you will see all the leaders who were sustainable at scale had some practices to take care of their health. Mahatma Gandhi, for example, was hugely particular about his diet, right? All that, drinking only goat milk, he would walk, he had a strong meditation practice. Nelson Mandela was also very, very particular about his health. He was in prison for so many years, and if he didn't take care of his health, he would have perished. And if you look back at, people like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, they had their own well-being practices which they followed. It may not be running a marathon, it's not running an Ironman, but they were taking care of their physical well-being in some intentional way. I think it's only now that we have Iron Man, and it's only now that people are talking about it. But I think anybody who's been at a leadership role has had to be mindful of their own physical well-being, and they have done it in their own way. And if you go back and read these memoirs of these leaders, they had their practices. Maybe they didn't exercise, but let's say they would follow a particular kind of a diet. They would be mindful about what they ate. They wouldn't have excesses of food and drink. So that is the way they take care of their health. Right? Now we speak a lot more, and thanks to social media, there's a lot of publicity about what these leaders do. But everybody who's led at scale, including the historical generals of the past, had to take care of their physical well-being. They had to do the activities that help them to stay strong physically. And in the older days, our daily schedule itself gave us those opportunities, right? You had to get up and walk. You had to do certain physical labor if you wanted to get certain things for yourself. Now we lead a fairly sedentary life, sitting at the desk and leading through computers. So exercise has become more intentional. But I think historically, all the leaders have paid attention to their well-being because intuitively they have realized that if they didn't do that, they cannot really perform and be their best at scale. And I think they've had the ability to change gears whenever they found that they were not doing well or feeling well, or they had an army to take care of their physical well-being.
So some kind
So
of
I
a
think they've
routine, some
done
kind of
that.
a routine
Some kind of a routine.
that helps
Absolutely.
them.
That helps them, right? Whatever their practices or whatever is, some food that agrees with them, they've all been doing that unconsciously or maybe intuitively for a long time because their necessary routine itself uh, ensured that they did it.
So I think there is this very famous TV series, Netflix series called House of Cards. Have you guys seen that? So in House of Cards, the main character, played by Kevin Spacey.
Yeah,
So
Frank.
Frank Underwood. So he has his own, some he plays with certain small dolls or certain small characters of sepoys and armies, and he paints them and he creates a very small caricature. And there was a time when the president of the United States came to his house for a dinner, and he's like, how do you take out time for this? He's like, I have to. This is what keeps me sane amongst what is that. So you're saying any kind of recreation, it could be playing with my son, it could be walking in the garden in the evening, taking a walk, it could be listening to music, right? So anything that is recreation, or specifically at least one thing that directly impacts your physical body.
Yeah. So we actually look at it as physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Some of them have an overlap, like walking in nature with a child takes care of the physical aspect because I walk. It also takes care of the emotional aspect because I'm building a connection with my child and I'm close to nature. So there are many activities which fulfill not only the needs for the body, but also needs for the heart, mind, and soul. And very often effective leaders are able to combine some of this, right? So playing table tennis with my children over the weekend is a physical activity, but it also helps to nurture the mind as well as the heart. So, as I said, a well-being practice could be something that caters to any or all four of these aspects.
Makes sense. So we have now understood a good part and deal about the body. Which is the next, Rajesh, that you want to pick up? The mind?
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about the mind, which is really about how do you keep your mind sharp, right? And here, what we say is that, and we are making a distinction between the mind and the heart, right? So the mind is more the mental well-being, and the heart is more in the emotional well-being space. So for the mind, few practices that we saw were: are we reading enough? Are we listening to podcasts so that we are picking up new ideas and then we are able to build on them? When was the last time you learned something new? It could be a language, it could be a skill, it could be anything, because learning is a great way to keep your mind sharp. Are we going and talking in platforms and forums, teaching? One of the leaders we spoke to said he teaches over weekends in a college, and that keeps his mind sharp, because not only does he have to prepare his notes for the teaching, but he has to anticipate what questions the students might ask, and he has to be ready with the answers, right? So these are 3 4 examples of what we talk about as keeping your mind sharp. And then we talk about emotional well-being, which is really about how do you open your heart.
So in the mind, you're saying that so it is again extremely important to keep your mind active and
Yes.
young and sharp. That is one. So you are saying not to be stagnated,
Yes.
right? To always keep on learning new things. And the way to learn new things, you're saying, obviously, is by reading, is by listening, and also by teaching in a way, you're saying. So why teaching specifically? What happens if you try to teach something that you have learned, though you are not a certified teacher? I'm just curious, because teaching, people think, teachers hi padhayenge, main kyun padhaun? Why should I even bother about teaching somebody, right? This comes up in your mind. So why teaching is something that really impacts your
I think it's a little intuitive, right? In the sense that if I have to go and give a talk somewhere, or if I have to teach somebody something, firstly I need to know enough about it so that I'm able to teach. Now that itself makes me learn a little bit more. I think the second very important thing, especially for senior leaders today, is to unlearn and relearn. I'll give a personal example. I'm a marketeer, right? But I've been a marketeer for 30 years now, right? The concepts of marketing might still be the same, but the way marketing has evolved over the years has changed dramatically. In our time, it was only television. We used to have television maybe with a little bit of a radio and a print, and there was a certain way marketing was done. Then came digital. Now there is AI, there is influencers, and so on and so forth. So if I'm going to go to a university and try to teach a bunch of people about marketing, I need to first unlearn what I learned, relearn the concepts so that I make it relevant and contextual for them. And that experience itself keeps my mind sharp. So that's what I mean by how teaching can play a role in sharpening my own mind so that I can do that job to the best of my ability.
Yeah, I think because I practice yoga, so there was a line which I read long time back, which said, I think a teacher only said that the best way to master yoga is to teach yoga. That's what he meant. The more you keep on practicing and teaching, you will master the craft. That is the route. That's the way of mastering your own craft. That you start teaching it, and in parallel also it is. He was saying in parallel. You do your practice in the morning or whatever, and then you teach what you have learned, what you think is the right way. So I think that's what exactly you're saying. But Rajesh and Nirupama, then why, whenever we talk about mind and the tools to take care of the mind, meditation is the first thing that comes up, and in this conversation, this was missing. Is meditation, is there a place? Does it have a place, or is it something that, because not everybody can meditate. I hate meditating. I can't do it. It's against my nature. I mean, it doesn't gel with me. So am I missing out on something?
So that we do mention mindfulness as a practice to sharpen the mind, right? And I want to make a distinction between the meditation, the way we know it, which is sitting in dhyan for 1 hour, versus practicing mindfulness, which is a very important way of sharpening the mind. We do talk about meditation, and meditation is something I would say that cuts across both the mental and the spiritual aspect as a way of looking inward, taking time for self-reflection. I think meditation can be very, very powerful. Research has been done where they have mapped the brain waves of monks who meditate a lot and seen, that they are actually at a higher level of frequency. So there's plenty of research around meditation as a sustained practice which you can do for a longer period of time. In fact, one of the leaders we spoke to mentioned that he meditates for 1 hour every day. But I also completely agree that it's not everybody's cup of tea, and not everybody can take that time out. So in sharpening the mind, we say practicing mindfulness is extremely important. And what do we mean by mindfulness is finding that amount of time when you tune out all distractions. And we live in a supremely distracted world. The phone is pinging, somebody is calling, you have an alert on your laptop. But sharpening the mind involves focus. And you can build focus only if you're able to be totally mindful and focused on what you're doing. And that is a practice we advocate for sharpening the mind. And that can involve just simple practices like breath work. Right? We say, can you take 30 seconds before you jump into the next activity to close your eyes and just breathe, center yourself, and approach the next activity with complete mindfulness, not carrying the baggage of a previous conversation that didn't go well, or thinking about the next meeting after this particular call. So mindfulness is a practice of just bringing your whole attention to one aspect of what you're doing, minimizing distractions, and giving your whole self to whatever is there in the particular moment. It could be as simple as doing a puzzle. It could be a conversation that you're having. It could be a meeting that you're doing where being mindful actually sharpens the mind and heightens the focus. So a way of building mindfulness is by having a meditation practice. And we do talk a lot about meditation when we come to spiritual well-being. And each person can find their form of meditation. In fact, many of the leaders, including Vinita Singh, said running is my form of meditation.
Yeah.
It allows me to be completely mindful in the moment. I'm not thinking about anything else. Or playing a sport that I'm deeply fond of course, enhances physical well-being, but it's also a way of building mindfulness. That total attention, focus, concentration, minimizing distraction also gives me the space to sharpen my mind as well.
Yeah.
So there are many of these combo activities that we talk about, which is not only catering to one domain, but cuts across multiple domains.
Yeah. So we have understood about this. I now want to understand the heart aspect of it. What are the tools and what are the things that I can use to nurture the heart aspect, and why is it even important?
So I think on the heart, we speak about, again, really opening the heart is all about making connections. So one, do you actively seek out and make connections? And, in many ways, if you look at it, leadership is a lonely job. So one of the things that a lot of leaders spoke about is they have a small inner circle where they're able to share their vulnerabilities, talk about things that are going on, fears, concerns, anxieties, and so on, where they can laugh, they can cry, they can be themselves, and that can be very, very cathartic and help leaders cope with their emotions and be at an emotional equilibrium. So that's one of the things that we talk about. The other thing is, do you have a passion? And I'm making a distinction here between a hobby, which can be just a passing thing, versus a passion which you're truly passionate about, right? So, for example, photography is a passion for me, and I can go to any lengths to go and shoot and get that shot. And I find that photography, having a passion, significantly energizes me. Right, I come back from a shoot feeling extremely happy, satisfied, and fulfilled. And to the extent that I also find photography has a direct bearing on my ability to act as a leader. And I can go on to talk about it, but there are many ways in which it has impacted me both personally and professionally. So many leaders we spoke about said they have a passion like music, it could be a sport, it could be painting, but all of those again kick in those endorphins which energize and make me happy. So that's another way to sort of open your heart. The other one is what Nirupama alluded to earlier, which is being close to nature. Again, that's something that we all know that we feel very, very happy when we are amidst greenery or when we are going on a trek and so on and so forth. And that's another way to sort of open your heart. And the last one is, am I able to have a positive outlook in life and visualize positive things? See, one is to have just a positive outlook to say, hey, yeah, things cannot be bad. And even if they go bad, I can find a way of sort of overcoming. And a lot of leaders spoke about having positive outlook in life, which has helped them to sort of get over many things. So these are a few ways in which we talk about how you could open your heart.
So let's say I am able to open my heart. What area of my leadership would it affect? What part would it improve?
Yeah. So, for example, one of the things we talk about opening heart is connections, right? So, if you are able to connect with the larger organization, you are able to know what's going on, right? So, just to give a simple example, I used to, as a CEO, may have these formats where every week, I used to connect with at least 3 people across the organization, across levels, across hierarchy, across functions, just to understand from them how are they doing, how's their family doing, what do they like about the company, what do they not necessarily like about the company, which we can make better. And just those conversations, one, helped me to get to know each other better, but also helped us to take some steps to make the place a better place to work in. Right? So there are many ways in which it can not only have a bearing on yourself for you to be happy and learn, it will have an impact on the people you're working with, but can also have an impact on the overall organization culture and the productivity and the ultimately leading to growth of the business as well.
Makes sense. Yeah, Nirupama.
One other aspect, we also talk about the need for a leader to have an inner circle, to have a group of, I would say, friends or family or a personal board of trustees who also act as a sounding board. Because leadership can be a very lonely job. And, leaders don't have the luxury of confiding in the next person because they are in a position of power and responsibility. So, having a sounding board, people who in a way are also like kind of like therapists whom you can go to, talk to, share the issues, also helps you, of course, one, not to feel that you're totally alone on the job, but also it really nourishes you when you have people who've got your back and whom you can rely on for not just business advice, but issues, problems, a safe space for you to open your heart and share, listen, connect. It actually helps to reduce some of the stress that you're carrying as a leader who's expected to always be a role model and perform in a particular way. So a lot of leaders also said that in this having this inner circle of strong, close connections where you can be yourself, where you can open up, where you can loosen up, is a great way for you to nurture yourself emotionally as well.
Now, the next aspect, which is the fourth pillar. So I'm going to start with a very small story that everybody's aware of. But there was this man who went to India in search of inner peace and to discover himself in the 1980s, somewhere in the 1980s. And he ended up in an ashram. He went to ISKCON, he went to Radhakrishnan societies, he went to all the places, finally ended up in an ashram in Himachal of a saint called Neem Karoli Baba. When he went to Neem Karoli Baba's ashram, Neem Karoli Baba had passed. He had left his body, I think, a couple of years back. But he found something profound. He had a great, profound experience in that place. And then he was very happy. He was satiated that I found something. He came back to the US, started a company that we now called Apple. And he was Steve Jobs. Since then, many tech leaders have visited Neem Karoli Baba's place, including Zuckerberg, Mark Zuckerberg, and a lot of people. Spirituality and technology, specifically in the American tech ecosystem, works in parallel. A lot of CEOs are very vocal about their inclination towards the dharmic religion. It could be Buddhism, it could be Jainism, or it could be Hinduism. They are very vocal about it. A lot of spiritual startups have come up. A lot of spiritual integration is happening. A lot of concepts about singularity that Peter Thiel and other people are saying is derived from the dharmic ecosystem only. So I want to understand the relationship between spirituality and leader. Why is it important for a leader to have some kind of spiritual footholding, and how to cultivate it?
When we say spiritual well-being, of course, we're not talking about anything which is got to do with religion. I think there is a few aspects to it. One aspect is around, do I have a set of personal values that I live by, right? And having an awareness of that is very important. Why is that important? Values drive choices, and we all know that. So, do we have, as a leader, do I have a certain set of choice that I make based on my value system? The second is, do I have a larger purpose, right? And that purpose sort of often acts as a guiding post or a lighthouse. I wrote my own personal mission statement about 10 years ago. And one of the things I feel good about is, as a leader, as a human being, I'm sort of able to live by that on a daily basis, right? So that's the other piece that we talk about. The third piece is, Nirupama referred to it earlier, you asked that question, meditation, right? Am I taking out some time for self-reflection, some quiet time where I'm able to sort of go within and center myself and ground myself? And the last aspect of spiritual well-being we talk about is, We are all privileged to have what we have. So do I actively contribute to a cause? Do I give my time, money, effort, support to some cause which gives back to the community, to the ecosystem? So these are a few things that we talk about in terms of how one could work on enhancing one's spiritual well-being.
Nirupama, your take?
I think that pretty much covers all of it. I think if I will look at the spiritual domain, this is really the source and sustainability of the energy, right? So if you look at body, that gives you physical energy, the quantity of energy, the mind, sharpening the mind gives you focus of energy, and the emotional well-being gives you the quality of very positive energy. The spiritual is really the source. Where does this all come from? Which is connection to purpose and values, which is contribution to something larger than myself. And it, of course, it shows up in whether you do, some of these voluntary activities, but also are you able to connect to the purpose of why you're doing that leadership role itself, right? So Indra Nui coined this word, I think performance with purpose. So it's really what gives you the foundation for doing all the other things and what makes it sustainable. Because leadership can be tough, messy, and you have to be in it for the long haul. And this connection to a purpose, to a cause greater than yourself, this ability to keep looking inwards from time to time, hold a mirror to yourself, is what will enable you to be there for the long haul. It is almost like a spring that you go back to from time to time, and you refresh yourself by doing some of these practices and connecting to something bigger than yourself. So while it's not connected to religion, having a faith-based practice is very important. It could be anything. If you're an atheist also, you have something that you go by, a value, a philosophy, a life motto. This is what is something that will sustain at scale. And that's how we see nurturing the soul or the spiritual domain has to be very intentional, and it has to happen continuously.
Is it possible that a higher level of spiritual traits in a leader can also lead to a higher level of empathy?
Absolutely. I think, while there is no direct correlation, but all the leaders we have spoken to have mentioned empathy as a very, very critical aspect of leadership. And if you are able to connect to a cause greater than yourself, have clear self-respect, self-introspection, it does allow you to connect with other people, I think, in a more positive way and understand what they are going through, right? It's about, how shall I say, reducing the voice of ego and connecting to the self helps you to connect to other people as well. And this, in a way, runs through all the other domains also.
Makes sense. Rajesh and Nirupama, I want to ask this one last question. I think it's very important. It is basically the other part of your book, which is also then about empowering others. So now my problem lies over here is that I am a lead. I'm a CEO. I'm creating a product. I have a lot of people working in my company. Okay. I am just one man. Let's say there are 500 people who are working in my company. We are creating good. They are all getting their salaries. I mean, my job is not to praise them for the good work they have done. They were supposed to do it. My way of giving them thanks is to give them money. Because I never mentioned in the contract that if you'll do good work, I'm going to give a pat on the back, right? Or I'm going to empower you. I am being very technical right now. You do good work, you increase the revenues, you all will participate in the money creation machine that we are creating. You get your salaries, and whatever you do is none of my business. So why is empowering other something important for a leader? And is it not spreading oneself too thin? And how much can I empower somebody? Because when I think about empowering, in my mind, empowering is something that happens on an individual level. Inspiring can happen one to many, but empowering in my head at least happens one to one, because empowering is more personal than inspiring someone. You can inspire an entire nation with your speech, but if you're empowering someone, it's like you are hand holding and guiding her or him to reach up to a level that you cannot do on a stage for thousands of people. In my head, it is one to one. So if I have this company, 500 employees, why should I? It's their job to get empowered. Na? You only come to my company to earn money. I can't take the responsibility of empowering you all. So that was my quandary. That was my confusion. So I want you to explain how empowering works, why is it important, and how to do it.
I think that is a question that, of course, many leaders have. And I want to say that what we look at it is, how do you nurture others? Firstly, I think it is, a fundamental to a leader to take people along, which is what Rajesh had also mentioned. You can't lead by yourself. You have to take people along. And this is what helps you to have leadership at scale. And we look at 4 specific behaviors for nurturing. Mentoring and coaching, which is not just you, but also how do you build a mentoring and coaching culture in the organization. Inspiring, whether it's one-to-one or at scale, there are many ways in which leaders can inspire. Listening to one, listening to many, and E is what we call empowering. And we actually look at different best practices to do that. So a leader who demonstrates these behaviors is nurturing others. And as to why it's important is because we have seen that people are no longer working only for money. If you look at the Gen Z, it's almost like they're volunteering their time. The monetary reward or the incentive is almost like a baseline for employees. They are looking at something more, which could be growth, which is autonomy, how do I contribute? And therefore, nurturing becomes important. I would say performance is a baseline. You have to provide the resources, but you really want people to grow. You want people to be able to take risks, to come up with better ideas, to contribute, because soon AI is going to take care of almost all the basic level functions that people perform. And therefore, it's very important for a leader to grow people to their potential, because you're not going to have a person who's going to be a data entry operator for the rest of his life. You do want the person to grow in the organization, to contribute at a higher level. For that, nurturing is a necessity. It is not a luxury. And I think that's a great point you made. It is different from spoon feeding. In fact, we look at the leader as a gardener. And as a gardener, you have to prepare the soil, which is not just for one person, for the entire organization. You need to create the culture. You need to have the right values. You need to have the right policies and processes. Create the soil where people can thrive. Then you plant the seeds. You bring in the right kind of people, or you nurture the right kind of people. You plant the seeds for new ideas, and you provide water and sunshine, which is essential for the plant to grow. You're not making the plant grow. You're not injecting steroids and pulling the plant up, but you provide water and sunshine, which is the feedback, the training, the resources, the words of encouragement, so that your plant can grow. And therefore, you also have to do the last part, which is what we call pulling out the weeds, right? Which is very different from spoon feeding. It's not a nice, fuzzy activity, but giving people sharp feedback, rooting out toxic behaviors, rooting out policies, processes that don't work for the organization is also an important aspect of leadership. So we believe if you do all these 3, you are able to create a nurturing environment where people feel motivated to give their best, right? Which is what psychological safety is all about. And Google found that out through a research that the teams that perform better are able to do so because of the psychological safety that the leader creates. So that is why we believe nurturing is a leadership imperative, and it is different from mollycoddling or spoon feeding their employees. And therefore, leaders need to practice that very, very intentionally.
Rajesh, your take?
No, I think she's pretty much covered all the points. And I think what you talked about empowering, we believe is one aspect of nurturing others. So there is more to it in terms of mentoring and coaching, inspiring, listening, and empowering. And I think if leaders are able to bring in certain qualities in themselves, what we call hope, which is about humility, openness, patience, and empathy, then they are able to very easily demonstrate some of these behaviors to effectively nurture others, which ultimately also leads to nurturing and growing the organization.
So this is not something that is a mandate for a leader or a CEO, but if you do create a nurturing ecosystem for your employees, you are saying it can eventually benefit the organization as a whole.
For sustainable holistic growth.
For sustainable holistic growth. So basically, it's worth investing in this.
Absolutely.
If I am a CEO of a company, so if I take this takeaway, it is worth investing in my own employees so that in the end, it can benefit me only. I mean, I'm just being like a very, trader mentality right now, because
Sure.
most of the CEOs do have the trader mentality, and that is why they are able to create these huge empires.
And I like the use of the word. It's investment.
Yeah.
And you do investment with some kind of a return in mind.
Absolutely.
And the return is individual growth and business growth. Absolutely.
So collectively, yeah, it's gonna actually just push my organization.
Absolutely.
Great. Now, Rajesh and Nirupama, for everyone of a reader who wants to pick up your book, give them a reason to pick up your book, or any message that you like to give them. The why of, there are a lot of books on leadership. What will they gain? Why they should pick up the Nurturing Quotient?
I would say it's very simple. Do you want to lead a happier, healthier life and have impact at scale? Read the Nurturing Quotient. And I also want to say one thing very unique about this book is that we have an assessment tool. And if you take the book, there's a QR code right at the back of the book.
I checked
and if you take the assessment, it will give you your MQ, which can be the starting point of a brilliant, beautiful journey into investing in yourself and others, so that at the end you can lead a happier, healthier, more purposeful life.
Beautiful. Rajesh?
Yeah, I think the cost of the book is less than a cost of a coffee. The cost of the test is less than the cost of a coffee. So if you save and yourself the bother of having 2 coffees, I think you'll get something which will really help you to nurture self, nurture others, nurture the business or the ecosystem. And honestly, one thing, if I were to say, we have used the context of corporate life and interviewed 117 CEOs, but this book can hold true for anybody who aspires to be a better self of themselves and also impact others around them and the ecosystem. So go ahead and pick up your copy of the Nurturing Quotient.
No, 100%. For any leader, it is definitely going to give her or him a lot of things to think about. Whether they act it or not, that's up to them, but to think about, that's very important. At least you should have some material to think. Whether you act is not nothing, we can't control that. But I thought a lot about the spiritual aspect of it and the physical aspect of it. Really hit me very hard that it's so important. It is so imperative to have that thing that we totally take for granted. Absolutely. So with this, Rajesh and Nirupama, thank you so much for taking out the time. I hope this was a fruitful discussion, and I hope you were able to do justice to your work.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. You asked some very great questions, and I have a feeling we could have gone on and had a much longer conversation. Thank you for inviting us to the podcast, and it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And I must say, I really want to acknowledge the work you're doing to support books and authors, the habit of reading, which is so important for writers like us. So thank you so much, and wish you all the best in the work you're doing with.